There it is.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Brown. How you doing?
How you doing? It's been a couple weeks.
It's been a week and a half at least. Yeah, maybe even 2 weeks.
Eventful 2 weeks.
Yeah, actually, I'm very interested. I think the news of the day is something that we touched on in a conversation that I don't think we actually recorded.
Probably.
And just to let everybody know, we do all of this off the cuff. This isn't something where we sit like 2 hours before and we prepare. This is all off the cuff. Nothing is
nothing
prepared
scripted
prior to us actually hitting record and doing our podcast. So just wanted to let you guys know that this isn't anything that's this is genuine.
Yes.
With mistakes and all.
We believe in free flow. Yep.
We're doing it for real. It's the reality TV show where it's already rehearsed. We don't do that. So it's all genuine how we feel. And one thing I wanted to do, welcome to Brown and Browner. I'm sorry, I guess I didn't say that. And Mr. Brown, I really wanted to pose to you today. We talked about Biden. We talked about the timing of things and whether or not he would stay in the race and what his chances were, what we thought his chances were.
Yeah.
How do you feel today?
Two things. One, I'm somewhat glad that he made the decision, it seems, unto himself, because that's how he kind of portrayed himself on his interview with Lester Holt, I believe, a week or two ago. That he makes the decision on himself. It's probably him and Jill, if anything. I'm glad he came to terms with the realization that he's probably not just doing it for himself. He needs to do it for the party and probably for the country, more than likely. So at least he's not thinking selfishly. Now, there is some people out there, and I think I've heard this on a few other podcasts I listened to, where a lot of people saw this as a selfish act in the fact that he's trying to preserve his legacy in some fashion. There is that slant you could take. At the end of the day, let's take it for what it's worth. The man's been in politics for what, 40, 50 years?
Oh, I thought it was 150 years.
Yeah, it might be 150. It might be a couple of lifetimes. Needless to say, the man deserves his due for public service at the end of the day. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care whether you believe in his policies or not. At the end of the day, he served his country well. And he needs to recognize that it is his time to go and pass the baton. Now, in terms of that, when it comes to both the presidency and just in terms of his legacy, I think there are questions to be asked. In terms of his legacy, he was involved in several different major policies around the course of those 40, 50 years that he'll probably be remembered for more in political circles. I think amongst common folks like you, me, and everyone else, hopefully that's kind of listening, I don't know if I can pinpoint 1, 2, 3 things that I will, look back 30 years down the road and say, hey, I remember Biden for this, that, and the other. As a vice president, yeah, he was part of ACA, but that's an Obama thing, right? That's Obama's credit, in my opinion, because he was the president. That idea. He may have been part of the group, but it was Obama's idea. Some might say some of the policies that Biden had maybe in the 70s and 80s when he was a senator, may have been things that he got attributed to. Frankly, I can't name those things off the top of my head without somebody telling me about those. Similarly, during his presidency currently, he signed multiple multi-billion or trillion-dollar relief acts, I believe, not just for this country, but for another country, in fact. And that may be what he gets remembered for better or worse. The fact that he signed them, but was he part of building them? No, they were built in Congress, unfortunately, by whoever the writers were, Democrat or Republican. So I just don't know what his legacy is going to be. I understand they're trying to preserve it, maybe both himself and the party at this point. His legacy could be defined by who ends up inheriting his presidency, whether it be by vote or by takeover. Now, he has said he's going to support Kamala Harris. Going forward, I believe the number one criticism most neutral people will say is, what has she done as vice president? And frankly, I can't name a single thing. She was tasked with trying to manage the border, from my understanding. And frankly, that has been not so good from what I'm hearing, or nothing notable that was gained in terms of positive outcome, I should say, the most positive light. In fact, I could say that for most of Biden's cabinet, honestly, because I don't know if anybody is over there has really taken credit for any positive outcomes that have come out of his cabinet in general. Transportation, environmental, anything you can do across the board. So, in terms of leaving a legacy, it's going to be interesting to see what happens these next 3-4 months. I mean, we're less than almost, I want to say 105, 106 days out from the election at this point for president. And you've got, just roughly about another 50 days after that, it's the end of his term. So you got 150 days to basically prove what your presidency was worth for the last 4 years. So we'll see where that goes in terms of his support for Harris. He has his choice. Do I think it's the best shot for the Democratic Party? No, not by any means. Are there at least 3 or 4 other people that they could probably bring in the fold, either as president or VP, that could change that? Absolutely. And that'll be interesting to see what happens literally, I think, this week. I think a lot of those people will come out and say, hey, I'm going to run, or I'm going to run. And it's going to turn into a race going into the DNC, which is next month. I think it's a problem for the DNC. I think that sets them up for a grand failure at this point, both Biden's exit and whoever decides to take over. It's too short a runway. You're talking about the presidency of the United States, not some, amateur hour, small town mayoralship. We're talking about world leader. If America is still a superpower, or the superpower, I should say, then you can't expect somebody to come out of the woodwork in 4 months and become the supreme leader of the world. It doesn't work that way.
I don't disagree with you, and I do think we are the superpower, as a superpower, but we are the superpower.
Yeah.
What I would say, alongside what you just commented on, was I totally agree with the fact that I feel like everybody was held hostage, and shame on the Democratic Party for that. I also feel like one of your last comments, this is for at least representing as a leader the superpower,
The
the
free world.
biggest country. The world looks at us for what we do. And I'll tell you this. I like how you use the mayoral, small town mayoral thing. You can't hold the voters and the public hostage. And you didn't do your due diligence. Like if I was a coach, I know players like to play hurt, and I had some of that when I was coaching soccer. And it's, if you're hurt, you might be hurting the team by being out there. Why wasn't there a thorough review versus, hey, Joe, do you feel like running? Yeah, I feel like running. Well, that's great. But that didn't mean that he should have been the candidate, or at the very least, we should have had options available to us. They just gave us him because he's president and he's the incumbent.
Here's what's an interesting note that I took over the weekend. It wasn't until the senior leadership, or at least what I like to call the senior leadership in the Democratic Party, spoke up and said, hey, we question this. And those came from Pelosi, Schumer, Obama, who actually spoke up supposedly at a junket, or was at least recorded of saying, or documented of saying, that yeah, he doesn't really support Biden being the nominee, or he may have had that conversation with Joe Biden. And it wasn't until all that came out that finally Joe caved on Sunday at 2 p.m. And that was the interesting thing. So I'm like, okay, on one hand, Biden came out last week and said it's my decision. On the other hand, he obviously had enough pressure coming from the senior leadership, Pelosi, Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Obama, all these people finally putting the pressure on, and all the senior members of the Congress and stuff on the DNC side saying, hey, we need to go with a different option. And again, this is a testament to what you just said. You had 4 years to vet somebody out, maybe longer. I mean, frankly, I think you had 8, because at the end of Obama's term, you should have had a young perspective ready.
Grooming this person,
Exactly.
setting them up, bringing familiarity to them by having them out in the public eye. How much time does someone have right now? So now we basically wasted all of the time any candidate would have had to be able to establish themselves, and truncated everything and said, hey, you know what? You guys are going to do a sprint, and whoever sprints to it fastest wins. That's
Yes,
that's what the process gave us.
I mean,
Come on, guys.
It's an
I mean, I'm
indictment.
already on it. Quite frankly, I was already a little frustrated with the fact that both parties gave us the same candidates we had last time. That was improvement. That's all we had, Republicans or Democrats. Nobody was even worthy of having any real voice. And you just said these two are going to be the nominees.
Yep.
The two-party process really needs to be reviewed and maybe needs to be scrapped. So they can actually be real people and real candidates that people want to vote for, versus having somebody shoved down their throat. You're going to be a Democrat, you're going to be a Republican, and you're going to vote for this person.
Definition of democracy, as the Greeks said. It's supposed to be a leadership of the people, the people's choice. I'm sorry, but this isn't the people's choice. It's, hey, you got 2 choices only, and you, the people, will choose. and most of us, I think, are still leaning none of the above at this point.
Well, I think that I don't know. I think some people really look at this and say, well, when your vote's supposed to count, right?
That's the problem.
Do you feel like it really counts?
No, unless it's a local election up to maybe the governorship and Senate seats and things of that nature. I feel, and I'll be very bold, I don't think your vote in this country is useless for the presidency, because at the end of the day, you have an electoral college.
That's the biggest thing right there, the electoral college. Yep.
If you live in a state that already has a slant, I think Illinois is mostly Democratic. Maryland, I believe, is historically supposed to have been Democratic, but frankly has been kind of back and forth, at least locally. The South is usually Republican. The North is fairly, Democratic. It's just how it's always been.
Yeah, and then you have the Michigans and Wisconsins and the Pennsylvania and Arizona and a few of these swing states that decide the fate of the presidency.
Unless you live in those places, you don't feel like your vote counts at the end of the day. I could be a Southerner and I could be a Democrat, and I know my vote's not going to matter. I could live in the North and be a Republican. I know my vote's not going to matter in the state of New York. And that's the whole thing. And that dissuades people's choice at the end of the day, because then there's either no involvement, meaning people just won't vote, which doesn't help anyone, honestly. Mm-hmm. You're giving up your unalienable right to be free at the end of the day from historical context, and you've been forced into that. That's the worst part.
That's the part.
Yes,
they strong-armed you into voting, not necessarily for the person or a person you believe in, but for what they give you. That's like going in and you got a pocket full of money and you're getting a type A lunch. You remember the type A lunch when you're in high school, where it was already predetermined what you were going to have? And if it was crappy that day, you could buy something else.
Yeah.
Can't buy anything else here. You're going to take that type A lunch and eat that crappy cold oatmeal or whatever they give you. And that's all you're getting, folks.
Yep. No, that's sad truth. So I think the two-party system has failed. It has failed for a number of years, I believe. And at the end of the day, until there is grander change, which maybe we're on the start of that now. Maybe we're starting to see the younger candidates come through. We're starting to see finally some party dissolution, if you will. Maybe the Democratic power finally breaks open because of this, because now they're having to force to go someone with younger, fresher perspectives, perhaps someone who might last 4 years in office health-wise or condition-wise, God forbid. The Republican
give the
Party
person a stress test. Give them a stress test. Hey, you know what? We're going to have you go up the steps of Air Force One 15 times. And if you can't do that, you can't be president.
I remember as a kid in gym class, they used to basically the presidential fitness test. This is an elementary school. And you took it by default. Your gym teacher administered over a course of weeks, and you ran the mile, you did this, that, the other, jumping jacks. There's a certain criteria there, and if you passed it, you got a cool little certificate that was stamped, documented from the White House or whatever it was.
Oh, really?
Okay. It was national. It was kind of cool. So if you pass these thresholds, and at your age and weight and all that, then you got these cool little this little document. Now, why can't we expect the same of our presidency, whereas a fitness test, a mental test, and perhaps something of that nature? Now, again, 15 steps off Air Force One, I think, is a great way. Now, how about a round of golf in modern times?
Yeah, without Secret Service cheating for you and throwing balls back in the play.
Exactly. I don't want to see any planted balls either in the course.
But doesn't it make sense? And, just like anything, you administer a test. Well, this test was a little slanted and it wasn't necessarily. There should just be a basic standard senility test that says you are at least competent enough to be able to understand the words that are being said to you, identify what they mean, and then be able to use the information to come up with some kind of thought applying that. There should be some test. And if you can't do that, especially you can't do that without your wife being in the room, you have an issue, and you should not be president. And we should not be waiting to the 11th hour to say, well, I don't think this person is capable mentally, not just physically, mentally, of being president. You don't do that in July and the elections in November.
The physical part, I say somewhat facetiously, because you've obviously historically had FDR, who was in a chair the entire time, but the man was brilliant, right? So
he was brilliant.
At the end of the day, as a president, you need the mental acuity, especially to not only govern and lead within the country and look like a intelligent figure, but as I think the Republicans have pointed out, or at least Trump has pointed out, the ability to go with other leaders and talk to them and have those debates and things like the Xi's of the world or the Putins of the world or whoever it is. You've got to be able to stand your ground in a room without, like you said, your wife, whoever it is, your support around you, and be able to speak cognitively. So that's a minimum requirement at the end of the day. Now, I'm not saying by any means do I support Trump in that room either, because the guy doesn't have a filter. There's diplomatic processes to how you deal with people. And it's not even a matter of that they're dignitaries or diplomats or world leaders. I'm talking about just dealing with people. You be respectful.
Yes.
I'm talking about basic human decent being.
And that's funny you say that, because I think that's also something that should be said.
Absolutely.
In the history of America, while you have leaders who are great orators, who can command respect wherever any room they enter.
Yeah.
I don't feel like either one of these gets that done. But I think most importantly, and what my point here is, the president has a cabinet. He or she appoints key people that are responsible for different segments so that he can get a thorough understanding, be able to trust those individuals to do a good job, and make sure they're making the right decisions based on the vision that person, the president, has. Trump talks to the cabinet like they're 5-year-olds.
Eons.
Yeah. And Biden might just forget who he's talking to.
Yeah.
So,
I'll give you.
Do we get to this point that these are going to be the people that we have identified as our next leader, one of the two? And I'll tell you right now, and we talked about this before, and you said something about this earlier. What does the rest of the world see us as? Because they're watching. Yeah. What are they thinking we are? How did they react the first time Trump was in office? I can tell you, I got many calls, and when I went over to Austria, first thing they said was, because got relatives out there. Yeah. First thing they said is, laughing while they said, "So what do you think of your president?" Mm-hmm. That's what they were saying, and God knows they were just talking about Trump, just as like the most ridiculous president in the world. As a matter of fact, I had many times where they said, "How did this person get elected to be president of your country?"
I'm going to go grander.
Yeah.
So with the Paris Olympics coming up, I don't know if you've been following French politics over the last 2, 3, 4 months at all.
I haven't, but prior to that, there were some things going on, if I remember correctly.
And they still are. So they still have complete unsettlement between all of their quote unquote Congress and their president.
There. Yeah.
And I find it funny that, you would think France is considered one of the superpowers in the world, and they pride themselves in the fact that they founded democracy and all this other crap. But the fact of the matter is they don't even have their shit in order right now. And nobody's talking about it, at least in the US media. Now, if I were to go read the BBC, I'm sure I could find plenty on it. And that's what I tried to do. But it's hilarious. Like you just said, like people have their eyes on America and what we're doing. They're probably laughing their asses off. And I know they are, because between the example you gave on family in Austria, I could give in India. I can tell you
they angles. Are. The entire world, not one part, not parts that like certain aspects of our government or certain leadership, whether it's this party or that party. We're talking everybody saying this.
Yep. I mean, and the running thought in most modern history is that people in other countries, whether they're top tier or bottom tier, they think of America as a place where they can have quote unquote freedom and opportunity. And there is a motivation to migrate here or whatever it is, or, in some fashion be connected to the United States.
Right.
I think that's been lost over the last 15 years, honestly. There are places in the world that you could still say maybe lifestyle is better or way of living is better. So, people can argue that, as I'm saying. I'm not saying I fully agree with it. I'm saying people could argue that, hey, it's better to live in Australia or anywhere, Britain, wherever it is.
Right.
Other countries and places where people aren't as, what's the best word? They don't see America as an aspiration anymore, because they know that other places exist that they could get similar freedoms and opportunity. And America is no longer seen as this like elite number one. Now there are a few number ones, 4, 5, 6 places that people could see themselves in a better place if their country or wherever they live is not as, resourceful or opportunistic in that manner.
I still feel like if you were to look at the world,
I still feel the best. Personally.
3/4 of the world still wishes they lived in America.
Absolutely.
But you're right about, I think that there are,
I'm talking about that
decided, hey, you know what? If I can do anything, it's me going to America. That's how I met my wife. That was her aspiration. But I think you're right that it's not the same anymore because of how they view America. Well, and I think one of the biggest things, and this is something that I still struggle with overall, is how is the rest of the world able to, I know the answer to this, but how is the rest of the world able to manage the idea of possession of weapons in a way that you don't hear? Don't get me wrong, mass shootings happen regardless. There was something that happened in France not that long ago where somebody went and shot up the newspaper, etc. That happens. But the frequency of what happens from a gun violence standpoint here versus the rest of the world is, there is a huge gap in what we call the rights of the people and how they're used versus the rest of the world. If constables in England or France or wherever don't have to have guns, and yet they can still maintain some type of, control over the crime. And people are acting more civil when they don't have guns in their hands and they're not killing each other. But we can't do that here. And I don't care who's president, because I don't even know. I don't know if that's a president thing. I think in order for that to change, there'd have to be control in the Congress, and the president. All of those have to be aligned. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
To me, the most powerful entity in this country when it comes to anything related to guns is the NRA, and they have control of both sides of the aisle as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't matter who you are. It's a fact of the matter. It doesn't. We like to believe as a general populace that most people probably would like to see some sort of gun change, in the country. But the fact of the matter is the small faction of people that control government, both sides of the aisle, are at the day governed by the fact that the NRA and whatever lobbies and things exist are going to control everything in that industry and, more importantly, society when it comes to guns, unfortunately. That's my general take.
I mean, that's happening. That's what's happened. I don't understand. Like, I wonder, sometimes I question the idea of what government really does for the people.
Public
And
works. That's it.
and
Even
some people want to get rid of government altogether, and there has to be some mechanism in place to oversee corporations. Because if you had no government, you had nothing. Imagine the corporations going crazy, doing whatever they want, dumping things wherever they want, destroying more of the environment because there's no oversight. So there needs to be some type of oversight. But I just question, what is the government doing for the people?
nothing progressive. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we've done nothing progressive since Obama left. He created ACA. That was his lasting legacy. That was something he created for the people and for the greater good. Since then, we have not seen any policies. People will take credit for, I got tax credits and all this other crap.
Yeah,
that's a piece of the pie. I want to see actual progression of society by a leader or group of leaders or the government, and that has not happened since then. We haven't seen infrastructure improve in this country. In fact, it's gotten worse. Classic examples down the road for me in this bridge.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm sorry, but how many train derailments and shit have we seen since the last 10 years? I find it laughable because you have parts of the world that rely on the train system, Japan notably, or India, that have two of the largest rail link systems in the world, and you don't hear about shit.
Well, that's because they are monitoring, they are constantly updating, they are constantly putting money into the various items relating to the infrastructure to ensure it doesn't do that.
Well, looking out for the greater good of their people. See, now they're providing a service to the people and maintaining it. In our case, I get that people are against having government control over certain things in the world. Like, they believe in privatization versus government. I get that separation. But at the end of the day, like you just said, government is there to protect, oversee, and then more importantly, also help improve where possible, right? Like, that's the whole objective.
Yeah, identify where there's a deficiency and then come up with a plan of action to be able to, manage that, overcome it, eliminate it.
Flint, Michigan's their best example. Basic water. I'm sorry, but that's what separates us from third world countries. I hate to say it in such a trivial or Darwinistic way, but our basic premise of having clean drinking water at every single tap in the country separates us from the third world because they don't have those mechanisms or organizations and things.
Not broadly anyway.
Right. For all citizens. I mean, I'm sorry, but if I were somebody living in another country, I find it laughable that probably your drinking country in the middle of the Sahara Desert with no plumbing is probably cleaner than what Flint, Michigan had to go through.
Why? And see, this is where I have a problem with the idea around capitalism. Instead of us doing the right things, we try to do the wrong things for the sake of money. You know what? Let that bottom line, let me balance the budget. Let me do this, let me do that. Some of it, warranted and needed. Some of it, not so much. But at the end of the day, we sacrifice that one thing that should be common across any government, any nation in this world, is that you're supposed to look out for the people. How nationalistic are people going to be and believing in your country if we drink crappy water? You know what? We're going to sacrifice morals and principles for the sake of somebody else making an extra dollar.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, and take it kind of even broader. It's the people making decisions as to what those priorities are.
Yes, that's it. The priorities, money's always right here.
That's the cancer in the country, right? Like, you have trillions of dollars, tax dollars at your disposal in the government, right? Every year. And you can go to these cool little simulator websites and stuff and model like how government spending takes place. Like X amount goes to military, this, that, the other, and all that stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the people making the decision, which is our Congress, not just the president, but the Congress.
Not just president. People forget that. There's a more than just one figurehead that rules and does this. We're not a dictatorship.
Right now, we've been so focused on the presidency and probably the judicial shit right now. Everybody forgets that honestly, this election needs to be about Congress. you need to clean house, as far as I'm concerned. Both sides of the aisle need to clean house, get rid of the old guard, if you will. Start fresh with new perspectives, people who are willing to put the energy and commitment into making public progress, in my opinion. And again, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, you need to find those people that have the young energy, because frankly, it's the old guard on both counts that's controlling the bad choices that we're probably making as a country right now, or what we're prioritizing in the wrong way, like you just said.
Yeah, and that is the key. I mean, these people who are leading us aren't really leading us into the future. They're using the past as a foundation on how things should be run today. And I don't believe that they're applying the proper tactics in order for us to really be able to progress. What's going to happen tomorrow? One big thing that we continue to do, and I see there's been some improvements, but it's been slow, is what about what we do with the environment? What is the world going to be for when we're long gone and our children are our age and their children are in their 20s or whatever? What kind of world are we going to have then?
Well, I think that's what gets lost, is the ability of our current leaders, young, old, whoever, to look forward 10, 20 years beyond their current role. And everybody's so self-interested in protecting their power that they have now,
That's it.
that they don't look forward. And the way to look forward, and this was good about the previous, 50 to 100 years of the human, or of the American history, is where we looked for succession plans, right? So we, not just within the parties, I mean, that existed obviously inherently, but every president in the past looked for, every president, every congressman, everybody looked for a way for the next person in their belief core to step up and take over once the time was up.
That's what parties are for.
Yeah, and that's what parties are for, exactly. And in this case, like we just kind of revert back to the beginning here, the Democrats have royally failed because they were so short-sighted in trying to preserve or attack or whatever it is with their current base, that they forgot to look 10 years down the road and say, okay, here's who else we need to bring up the road in some fashion. Now, I will give some credit, even though I'm not the biggest fan, probably to the state of New York, where you've had Chuck Schumer there for, I don't know, 500 years probably. I don't even know. But now you got Hakeem Jeffries coming in, who's a younger, fresh face, African-American.
I was going to say,
people seem to like him on both sides of the aisle, very good guy. And, maybe the kind of the successor, if you will, to the idea of Schumer coming out of New York City, which I think makes sense. So that means somebody looked out and said, hey, let's think about this, right? And let's move this forward. I can't say the same for everybody else in the Democratic Party. Like even the Pelosi's of the world in California, I don't know who the next man up is in California, because frankly, that state's a mess.
Excuse me. I don't understand how. Look at the way the Democrats did Obama.
Yeah.
Think about that time when Obama ran. Think 8 years before that. Did you really know who he was?
No clue, and I was living in Chicago. Let me tell you.
I remember you lived in Chicago, of course, obviously, and that's what I don't understand. This wasn't 50 years ago, right? This was just recently. Obama was just president, 10 years ago.
Maybe that was it. Maybe they thought they could shotgun another guy just like they did with Obama, and just pick a rabbit out of the hat. I don't even know what they did for Obama, really. I got to figure out the story there. But he did come out of the woodwork. Essentially, he was a very new to the political scene kind of guy when he came in, and he captivated people because he was an eloquent speaker. He was a leader.
Oh my God!
He had a standing presence walking into a room. I mean,
he was presidential. He was presidential. I want my Obama back. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what party you affiliate yourself with.
Agreed.
You can never deny that Obama wasn't presidential. The way he carried himself, the way he spoke, his vision. And just to say something, when we talk about parties, people are, you can be aligned with whomever you want to be aligned with. But I will say this, Obama took an idea that Mitt Romney cultivated, and he expanded upon it, and put it in action.
Yep.
So it isn't that it has to be a Republican or a Democrat.
No.
We just need people who think more broadly about what's right for the people, not
Exactly.
for all of the people who represent the people, and I'll put that in question marks, who are getting paid, who are lining their pockets with lobbyist money, who are, funneling funds out of these different coffers that are part of our government, or lining it up with military. And don't get me wrong, we need to have a military, but I think the military has been one of those black holes where, yeah, we got a lot of money of the budget to be in the military because we need the military. But then you find, I don't know, how are all the guns getting in the street? I think people are taking some of these, the surplus of weapons that we have, and they then bring it to the streets.
Well,
There's no other way the guns are hitting the streets. Manufacturers are not selling them on the corner. They are not being sold at some, conference or being sold at some fair.
it's all underground. Yeah.
It's all underground, and it's being managed by those people who have access.
Yep.
No different than drugs. We're on drugs. We need to go into the ghetto and then get all those drug addicts. No, if you got rid of the actual supply and the source, nobody can be a drug addict. If you get rid of the guns from the source and not the manufacturers, I mean, yeah, if you really wanted to go to the source, you go there. But I feel like,
why aren't we doing the same thing with guns that we did with drugs in the 70s and 80s? We went after the cartels. We cut off the heads. We went after Pablo. We went after all the characters down in South America and Mexico and everything else. And you cut off the cartels.
Not all of them.
Well, not all of them. No. But don't get me wrong. It's still, now it's pervasive as ever. Now it's still there. But they went after them hard, is what I'm saying, in the 80s and 90s and all that, to where there was at least a downward trend at some point. I don't know if I can prove it, but at some point between the 60s and 70s down to the 80s and 90s, because of all the hits they made in Mexico and all the hits they made in South America and Colombia and everywhere else, there was enough of a dip to where you saw changes in our major cities like New York, San Francisco, LA, Chicago. There was enough of a crime dip and enough of a dip in murders and stuff like that to prove, I think, to some degree that stuff
actually worked.
Yeah, but if you did the exact same thing with guns, said, hey, all gun manufacturers, you're cut off from, building or whatever, marketing in the US or something like that. Okay, what would that do? That may help. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it may help, because also there's going to be an influx of guns coming from, like you said, underground sources that we can't figure out where they're getting their own weapons from. And then, of course, there's ghost guns, which I like to always comment about.
Oh,
ghost guns are the scary thing.
Plastics or what?
And that's the scariest thing. Yeah, it's 3D plastic.
Yeah.
Or 3D manufacturing that comes in pieces, and then you manufacture it up when it comes together.
That is scary.
That shit's scarier than I think the whole concept of having registered guns and rifles and things that exist today. So
people still believe in the guns don't kill people, people do. I'm sorry. A person without a gun, it's not going to kill you, or has
that's the thing.
Significantly less of a percentage of being able to do that.
I can't start a fire without tools. Same analogy. I don't got 2 sticks of my bones here to start something.
So I never understood that. But I also look at this, like when we talk about guns and the manufacturing and all of that, when the Black Panthers came up with their automatic weapons, how long did it take us to come up with laws to disarm them?
Exactly. It took us, and that's actually a better example than my cartel, probably.
So
the US came down on those guys so hard, it was ridiculous.
and to be honest, while the Black Panthers may have had that aura of Black power and you mess with us, we're gonna get you, that kind of thing, people forget the Black Panthers fed children, educated children, had houses to help set them up. That's what the Black Panthers were truly about, because it was about empowering Black people.
They get a bad rap for the connotation of some of the bad things that few characters did versus all the positive movement in society that they were trying to make by being a coalition of people that was trying to revolt.
Exactly. And the pictures you see these fearsome Black guys with the big afros, and they have these guns. You know what? We're afraid of that picture. But how many pictures do you see almost on a daily basis? If you look at different countries, you look at even within our country with people carrying guns. Are we afraid of that? We're not.
Yeah,
They
that's
don't
true.
present a threat to us, and neither do the Black Panthers. They just wanted
Yep.
to get the rights of the people to be equal. That's all.
Yep.
And again, we can make laws to stop that because of fear, but we have no fear of everybody being armed. Let's put a beer in our hands and drive that truck, y'all, and see what happens.
True.
It's just
Very true.
sad. But even just going back to the whole idea of what government should represent, they are not representing the people. They are not identifying, and you mentioned it with the prioritization. They are not identifying what should be appropriate and should be a focus to help the people today, tomorrow, 10 years from now. All we want is what's here now. And like you said it, and I think I mentioned it too, the people who are running the government aren't connected, or at least understanding how things have changed from when they were maybe 30, 40. Now they're sitting around 60, 70, still running the government.
Yep.
And they want to run it in the old school way because that's how I make money and keep my power. But we're chasing power not to help people.
Yeah.
It's just the power's being chased. And the Republicans, some of you can admit this. And I'm not going to, I'll admit it on our side. I did not think that Biden was the right candidate. Yeah. But is Trump really representing what the Republican Party is about?
I mean, he's come out on both sides within the last 3 weeks, if you think about it. He said on one hand, he's I wouldn't say pandering, but at least trying to come off as more conservative or subdued, you would say. Quote unquote God-fearing in some ways. I'm not trying to belittle that. And then in other ways, he'll come out in the exact same speech, literally 30 minutes later on Thursday, in a completely opposite tone or rhetoric. Similarly, I believe he came out, I can't remember if it was this weekend or Friday or what it was, and he was talking about Project 2025 and how
that is scary.
How he's so just for context. So Project 2025 is a document or literally an idea or concept that was developed by very hard conservative thinkers. And the general assumption, and I say assumption because this is the part that people get misnomered at, they claim that this is going to be the Republican agenda. But in fact, Trump and even a lot of his inner cabinet have spoken and said, no, we do not prescribe to this. In fact, he came out publicly on Friday and said, I do not prescribe to Project 25, and made fun of it very openly.
But did he do that? But was that in earnest, or was that, hey,
that's what I'm getting
at. How people are viewing what this is makes me say these things, not how I truly feel.
And that's exactly what I'm getting at to what you said. Like, what do we really know in terms of his real agenda? His agenda is always going to be me, myself, and I. We know that.
All day, every day.
What me, myself, and I means is literally going to be, hey, I'm going to wake up one morning and come up with an idea, and that's what we're going to run with this week to my cabinet,
God knows it's not a solid one that actually has a foundation. It just I just popped in my head right now. Like, you know what? We could take what was he saying? You could take we could take something, I forget what it was now. I can't remember the drug that'll get us over COVID.
Oh, bleach.
Does that make sense? This guy actually said that out loud.
He said it in front of his entire cabinet and his health administration.
Well, and one thing I'm going to call out anybody who's in the Republican Party, call out anybody who's in the Democratic Party too, but specifically in this instance, the Republican Party. I saw something on TikTok the other day, and I remembered this, where Donald Trump, a young Donald Trump, thinking about being the president, said, if I were to run for president, I'd run on the Republican platform because those people are stupid and I could lie to their face and they would still vote for me.
Didn't he say that on Oprah too?
I don't remember where that was.
It was an interview.
I just remember hearing it before. When I saw it on TikTok, It just brought it back, and it's like, wow, I guess I have to give him this. He sure had enough insight to be able to tell you the truth about how the parties work, how he could literally be the biggest, say things that are just absurd, and people will still vote for him.
People give, or I shouldn't say people give, but people assume that Trump is, obviously self-thinking and all that, and he's ego-headed and all that. Now, I think that's proven. Now, given that, if you look back at both his presidency and more importantly, how he won in 2016, I'm going to give 150% credit to the entire team behind him in lieu of him. And here's why. In 2016, yeah, you got a relatively close race, I think, between Hillary and Trump in terms of how divisive the country was, what people were thinking at that time. Trump was brand new to the political game. People were like, "Oh, this is just another version of The Apprentice here. We're trying to vote somebody through," you know.
Yeah, but he was new. He was somebody that was the wave. He was outside of government, and people wanted something new.
Now, and then you had the established old guard with Hillary and the Clinton family and the democracy and all that. Now, there was obviously divisiveness there because you didn't see support from Obama coming to Hillary at that time or anything like that. If you look very closely, there was a little bit of, it wasn't like, "Hey, I'm going to vote for Hillary" kind of thing. It was kind of like, you know, it is parallel, is what I like to say. Parallel support, meaning mutual support for the fact that, yeah, you were my homeland security, not my homeland, sorry, my Secretary of State, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I'm going to support you, that kind of thing. But it wasn't like he was going guns a-blazing, you know, campaigning for hardcore, if you will, in the same manner that he's not doing it for Biden either, if you think about it. He's kind of standing on the side.
He's not out there stomping the pavement and saying, "Vote for Biden." Well, and that's funny because, you know, when you look at what Hillary represented, and I think, honestly, no matter what anybody would have done at that time, unless they changed it to a popular vote, the deck was sort of stacked against Hillary because Obama was a black man as a president, and we're going to follow a black man with not only a woman, but a woman that everybody wanted to paint as the butch, wear the suit, not a
Her
woman.
image didn't play off. Yeah, the image didn't help.
Yeah, so you know, it's just like, honestly, what should have happened, in my opinion, and this is hindsight. Hindsight should be 2020, unless you're an idiot. Remember that, guys. If you can see what actually happened, and you still are stupid enough to do the wrong thing the next time, you're dumb. That's just true.
Well,
wait. Let me finish this. So, given the fact that, you know, we saw Hillary lost, but she really won the popular vote, everybody really wanted Bernie Sanders. And I think that's why some people were holding back. And I also think that what's happening right now should have happened then. Bernie would have beaten Trump. The nation, half of the nation, and we still see that in the voting, couldn't take having a black man and then having a woman like Hillary become the next president. That just wasn't happening.
I'll reconnect the dots to what we said about the Democratic Party in succession. So historically, American history, we've always had a scenario, good or bad, of a vice president usually running for office the year after an 8-year term for a president has ended, right? And you had the Al Gores, the Dan Quayle. Historically, you can go back, you know, hundreds of years, and this has happened. And generally, the vice president has either gotten voted through, or the other party's opposition that ran the previous time got through. This time, you didn't have a Mitt Romney running in 2016. Joe was not put. Joe, I believe, was trying to become the nominee, but the Democratic powers that be decided to anoint Hillary. Now, why they did that is the magic question, I think, because that would have been the more ideal time for Joe, I think.
Mistake number one.
Yes. And so I think that goes back to all the party politics and all that garbage that I think cost history in terms of that happening. Because I think Joe in 2016 could have possibly beaten Trump.
Yeah, coming off being the VP, he could have beaten Trump. And for him not to be the candidate, and again, you don't have to.
I'm sure that had to hit him a little, right?
What's that?
I'm sure that had to hit him a little, right? Like,
I'm sure it did too. But again, where's the Democratic Democratic Party's understanding of the pulse of America?
See, coming off of what I would consider to be a high off of Obama's presidency, and the fact that you just passed ACA and everything else, you would want to continue that legacy as the Democratic Party, you would think, especially with the guy that was in office when all this shit happened, and push it through another 4 years with Biden. That would be the original thought by most common sense thinkers, I would say.
And that's cohesive, right? It has a cohesion there because He was part of the regime that did these things. So he could
Exactly.
carry that torch moving forward. I don't know
Exactly.
why Hillary was, or how they promised Hillary, whether it was in some dark room somewhere. They said, Hillary, by the way, we're going to make sure that you get an opportunity to run. But they did it wrong. They identified so many things wrong. And again, how many times, and I don't know how many times you heard it, but I definitely heard it, and I actually heard it live from people. How many times did you hear as soon as Obama was elected, he is not my president?
Yeah, that's true.
He is not my president. And it wasn't not because he was a great orator, because he's articulate, none of those things. It was because he looked like me.
Little melanin.
He looked more like you.
Yeah.
So if that is the pulse of America and how people felt, not saying, and we weren't where we are today when it comes to looking at the disparities and equality for men and women. We were not as far at that point as where we are today. We still got a long way to go, I think. But why didn't we say, wow, this makes sense. Joe's right there. We could pump this up. We could do that. Or, and I'm trying to take the idea and the concept of what runs America is old white male thinking.
Yep. No,
and it's a man's world, and it's a white man's world in America. Why didn't we have Biden or Sanders at that time to be able to keep that going?
See, people also have to realize, and I'm going to make this it's going to make it sound trivial, but I don't mean it to. The presidency, any congressional race, it's a math game. And here's my take on this. The Saturday before Trump was shot, I believe Biden did a press junket, came off as strong in that speech, came off as very invigorating, very, he kind of is like, okay, this guy's got it. You kind of almost, I didn't think you forgot the debate, but you kind of said, okay, this guy's finally got his shit together. Let's move forward and kind of start thinking.
Yep.
Then Sunday came, of course, and shit happened. That's all I can say, in the worst way possible for everything. It made America a disgrace. Now, as soon as Sunday happened, here's what, and this, I kind of take this to, I don't know if you follow something called 538. It's basically a statistical guy that does like math on a probability on how things happen in the world, whether it's politics, sports, whatever the hell it is. It evolved from sports actually way back in the day.
It's called 538. Literally, the number's 538.
Yeah, that's what he calls the entire thing. It's called 538. So
I'll have to look that up. No, I do not follow that.
I forget the guy that did it, but he was actually well known for what he used to do in sports, but now he pushes it to every level, including politics. If you were to look at the polling, not just on 538, but in general, like you saw this upward trend in Democratic movement after Joe spoke on that Saturday. Then, of course, Sunday happened, and the Republicans shot up like this because the notable thing that happened Sunday, obviously with Trump getting shot, the man got up. And I believe lots of people have talked about this. Fist in the air, American flag in the back.
Flag right here.
I mean, you can't buy press like that.
and I'm sorry, and this is not to be callous. This is not to be insensitive.
Did it feel
but
staged?
Sometimes, just given his history, there was a moment where I just wondered, is this real?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, it's hard to not being the world that we are in right now. It's hard to not bring that up as a 1% chance, right? Like, it's not like it's hard not to.
You're giving him much more credit than that. That was like 0.001% chance. And plus, right away, people started saying things like, "This is the most iconic a picture of a president in the history of the world."
Well, and that's the thing. So I mean, okay, so if you go, Sunday he gets shot, fist in the air, the whole night. I mean, everything's off the roof at that point. American nationalism, everything's prideful at that point.
Sure.
A week goes by, nobody's talking. The RNC takes place. First 4 days of the RNC, honestly, the greatest scripted thing I've ever seen in my life. Like I sat there and listened to a few of the snippets from the speakers and stuff like that. It was extremely motivating, captivating, almost reminded me of like 08 Obama kind of thing, like the DNC. Like it was very, it galvanized their base, if you will. It really motivated every Republican out there, both sides of like conservative, moderate, whatever the Republicans are. It got all of them up. And then came Thursday. And then Trump took the stage. And the first 10, 15 minutes, he's going through what happened on, Sunday and him getting shot and all that. And he's trying to make it sound all like dramatic and soft and, compassionate. No, he
I
made it
want
sound
you
very
to feel for me. I don't have feelings myself, but I want you to feel for me.
He came off as a Karen. He came off as a Karen, like he wanted to play the victim card, but he's not very good at it, kind of thing. All right. And that was my take on it. That's just me. Everybody else can think what they want, but I get that he was trying to be sentimental, and the fact the man was shot. I mean, that's fucking crazy, right?
I was shot. You saw I was shot.
Yeah,
I was shot. Yeah, harder than any other person was ever shot.
That's the take, right? Just the way he spoke about it, you think that his script writers or whoever the hell's behind him would have told him, "Hey, ease up your tone, make it sound like you want to be compassionate, all that."
Yeah, make it sound like you're actually a victim. Sound like a victim.
The previous 4 days of the RNC made him look human. It made him a compassionate. It made people were like, okay, I can feel for the guy. Hey, I understand where he's got, that kind of thing. And then he gets on stage. First 15 minutes, gets into his diatribe. You can take it however you want. And then he started going off on a completely different rant for the next hour and a half on all, attacking Biden and Pelosi. Everybody, he went nutso scripto. And you could see, like, going back to the whole 538 analogy, like, you went from this, Democrats going up, and then the Republicans went like this, after he got shot. And then that whole week, they're riding a high and everything. And the RNC comes and they just shoot to the moon with the RNC the first 4 days. And then Trump comes and it goes back down to here. And everything's a level playing field again. So it allows Joe to step away.
Well,
because I thought for sure after the fourth day of the RNC that the Republicans had it in the bag. Regardless of whether
I actually saw some of that. Now, I just want to say to everybody listening, regardless of how we may, align ourselves politically or not align ourselves politically, I'm loving hearing you say, I saw the convention, and kudos to them for what they did, because that's what a convention is supposed to be designed to do. Like, doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republicans. No. You can still look at something and be able to evaluate it for what it is, not based on your perception or what your affiliations are, and then cloud the actual commentary around it and the critiquing of it by that versus just saying, hey, it was great. I just wanted to point that out because not everybody wants to do that.
They brought in polarizing characters. They had the Tucker Carlsons of the world and Hulk Hogan and the Kid Rock and
what, Hulk Hogan. I wish I could have piled. I wish I could have got up on stage and just pile drive him. I mean, come on, man.
I mean, you had Hulk Hogan doing Macho Man Randy Savage interpretation, like, oh,
right? Yeah. Right? He sure was. Come on, man, cut it out. And I thought that they were supposed to be a little bit nicer. At first, it was like, we're not going to talk about the Democrats, and then they just started trashing everybody.
Oh, it just went on a track. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it literally went from almost seeing a guaranteed Republican victory at the high of every high across the board. And then Trump literally brought it back down to earth and made us realize, oh, wait a minute, we're out of this cloud now. Here, let's get back on the ground again.
That's right. That's right. We were thinking of a different Trump. We were
thinking about the guy that actually got, actually learned from this event. No, wait a minute. He still is who he is. Like,
that's right.
We knew who we thought they were.
You know what they should do? Like, for every time he speaks, he represents, it should be like a definition that comes up on the screen. The law of diminishing returns. That's Trump. Start him off, it's all good. Yeah. The more he speaks, no.
Yeah. Roller coaster, man. I'm telling you. but that's the thing.
And Biden's no different. If they do it in the daytime, Biden looks great. Hey, he's still got a little pep. Look how he's looking. He looks like he knows who he is. And then by about 5 o'clock in the evening, oh my God, get Joe off stage. Does he even know where he is right now?
I mean, by 11:30 on Thursday, at 11:30 p.m. when Trump was done, everything was back to square one as far as I was concerned. Meaning, not necessarily that he still wasn't probably ahead of Biden in terms of just, cognitive and all that, but
I'm sorry.
Okay, the Democrats are ready to reset themselves. And then, of course, Joe, bows out of the race, which I think might have been good calculated timing, relatively speaking, because now they have to bring another candidate. But I think it goes back to what we said at the beginning. I think they're in a position to fail, regardless of who they bring in at this point. You waited too long.
Of weakness.
Yeah, you waited too long, basically.
You know what? You waited until the day before the prom and now you're going to ask some other girl because you got turned down.
Yep. That's exactly what, and then you're going to get rejected. Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what's going to happen. Absolutely.
That's why we got to this point. Baffles me. How we got to it baffles me. But now that we're here, your opinion, and I don't know, I don't know our schedules today, but your opinion. Can anyone, Camilla? We had talked about what I thought was something you mentioned one of our last conversations offline about this young mayor of what's that?
Westmore. Yeah. So I think if you were to throw, so here's my 2 cents on where the Democrats should try to go. And again, this is just my slant. You've got Kamala in there, but frankly, she's done nothing to prove everything to the country of what she's done or not done. Now, the running joke that I think I read on Twitter, which was kind of funny, is there's only one kind of person that can take down Trump, a prosecutor. What's Kamala, a prosecutor? Truth be told.
It's actually sort of funny.
It's
and
funny.
I have to say one thing. Is it Camila or Kamala? And I feel like
I had this conversation now with 5 people, and this is what's funny. So
and nobody knows.
Kamala.
Yeah.
There's literally 3 pronunciations because you could hear it from Biden, the general press, and then myself, who happens to be Indian. Now, and of course, I'm sure there's probably an African American winner also. So
it's just weird.
Again, it depends which way the wind's blowing of where Kamala's going to lean every day. Because I mean that's an indictment on her. I don't want to take a jab, but I mean I'm sorry, but she leans whichever way she needs to and panders to what she needs to pander to in the ways that she's always come off publicly. So I
feel like I'm listening to the Laverne and Shirley theme song where you go Kamala, House of Pepper Incorporated.
Exactly it. So
come on, man.
And so in my household, because we're Indian, we pronounce it Kamala, and because that's I've even got a Kamala, and I've got a Kamala in my family. Got a grandmother on a different side.
That's not an uncommon name, or it's not a name that isn't seen in your culture.
And yeah, it's pervasive in my culture. I believe it's actually pervasive even in African culture, where the Indians have been to Africa. So
I think Africa, in Africa, I can see that too.
So like I said, from a pronunciation standpoint, we pronounce it Kamla in my house. Like my kids jokingly call her Kamla auntie because that's how you refer to an elder. That's you refer to him as auntie or whatever, just like you do in some Black cultures, or an uncle or whatever.
Right.
So Kamala in my household, I had a conversation with another person. They were like, "Hey, Biden refers to as Kamala sometimes," which just sounds too American and drawn out.
You know what? 4 years ago, maybe I'm all right with whatever his pronunciation is and would believe it. At this point, I'm not sure he can pronounce his wife's name right. So
right,
you know that
unit.
You know that lady over there.
But then you got Kamala, Kamala. And I believe those are the 3 most popular. But needless to say, my entire take on her is that she hasn't made some sort of lasting remark. And of course, I'm not saying our last vice president or even our vice president's wife did anything either.
You don't hear a lot. You don't. Honestly, I was thinking about that.
Melania, Mike, really I don't even know who Mike Pence's wife was, honestly.
Right.
But the 3 of those characters combined had nothing contribute for 4 years, as far as I'm concerned, between Melania, Mike, and Mike's wife. Similarly, I can't say what Kamala Harris has done in the last 4 years for me to say, hey, she's responsible for this, that, and the other, good or bad, right? And that's where I don't think that she makes a good nominee. Now, who would make a good nominee? I think there's a basket full, and we'll start with the top of the list. I think the first name that comes to mind, of course, anyone is Gavin Newsom. But let's face facts. He's driven California into the ground. Again, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. That place is horrible because every corporation, every person, people are leaving the state. Like literally, I think it's seen a decline, and somebody's got to quote me on the numbers. I believe at least 500,000 people have left the state of California.
They want Arnold back.
Yeah, they want Arnold.
I'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back. But California is not in a great state of thing. Now, will he get stuff done? Yeah, clearly he's done that in California. He's followed his own agenda, good or bad, and gotten stuff done in that state. Same thing with DeSantis in Florida on the opposite side.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't
they
like
got
it,
shit.
but yes.
I don't like. You don't have to like either one, but they've gotten shit done the way they need to. So you know, Gavin Newsom stands as a viable candidate in that respect. Some people have also brought up, of course, the name Michelle Obama, but she's also noted and publicly said that I don't want to get involved in politics. But now does she do that at the behest of trying to help the party, and maybe even at the will of whoever the powers that be are on the DNC? And I don't know whether that's President Obama himself or anyone else. Hell, even Oprah at this point, right?
Now Oprah could run. They should stop the Michelle Obama. As great as of an idea that seems to be. Did you see what happened to Obama when he was in office? How he went in and when he came out? Like it looked like a cartoon where he came in, he was Obama. He had his little you know, he turned the White House. He got a playground, had a barbecue in the White House, all black. He was ready to go. By the time he left, he looked like Father Time whooped his ass.
He did get whipped.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure he's not going to put it. And she had a passenger seat in that, right?
She had a passenger seat, but she got a lot of things done too. I mean,
right. But what I'm saying is they were there.
Yeah.
Now they're outside of that. Why
they're
would they
they're
put
outside
back
of
in
it? Their kids are older now, mind you, right?
Yeah.
So you know the kids are in college away. So does she have an itch? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, she's like I said, she's come out and said that she doesn't want to be involved in politics. But you know, she's happy to help. She's happy to help, but not be directly involved, which I totally appreciate. I kind of the same way in different things.
Yeah,
I like willing to help, but I just don't want to take the lead sometimes.
I don't want to be the main person. I'm not responsible for this.
So I don't think she's going to run. So that takes away her off the table. Wes Moore has gotten brought up in certain circles. He's an African American, former military, decorated, clean as a whistle.
And where is he?
Maryland governor currently.
Okay, so right. That was the guy we talked about, right?
He took over for an 8-year term Republican governor here who was also very beloved and who I support, frankly, and knowingly because he's a moderate, is Larry Hogan. Now, Larry Hogan's running for Senate, so he's separate. It's a separate thing.
Yep.
He was thinking about running for president at one point because he was going to be the opposite to Trump, meaning he's always despised Trump since day one as a Republican, and he was going to be the alternative for moderate Republicans, but he decided not to go down that route. He too also some health issues. He beat cancer in his first round as governor. So that's one piece of the pie there. But going back to Wes Moore, so Wes Moore inherited the seat as governor with a lot of support, frankly, across the state. He obviously won the majority. The Republican candidate that was running against him really wasn't that great, so he kind of got an easy walk in that respect. That said, I don't think Wes Moore has enough national clout to take over the. Nope. Hey.
Sorry. Had some
No worries.
technical difficulties that caused my computer to shut down. So
no worries.
All right. You were saying
Wes Moore?
Yes.
Yep. So Wes Moore, current governor of Maryland, clean as a whistle as far as I'm concerned. Military background, very polished, eloquent speaker, well respected across both sides of the aisle, everything. They can't attack him. He's Teflon as far as I'm concerned. He would be a strong candidate in that respect because they couldn't attack him personally or otherwise. But the problem is he doesn't have national clout yet. So I think he's still another 4 years away, maybe 8 years away, if the Democratic Party would ever see itself fit to groom someone into the position.
So maybe it doesn't work right now, but that person should be the one that they're looking at 4 years from now.
But honestly, I think a power team would be something like him, and I mean, I don't know enough about him, but probably like him and Hakeem Jeffries. Not to banter to the African American vote, but at the same time, like those two guys are very powerful figures on the Democratic side right now. And
just stupid comment.
Yep.
Because I'm just trying to be on the other side of the aisle here.
Sure.
If we're looking at this comprehensively, do we feel
we're ready for another black president. No, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and doubling it up in the way you just mentioned.
I don't think that would happen. I hate to say it, but the optics are still the optics in this country.
Yes.
And you would still need a white person on that ticket.
Yes.
One or one or the other.
That's the idea.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree.
It's sad to say, with all the advancements we have made in areas relating to, and what I say is trying to be civilized again, we're identifying things that we are trying to address, but it's such a shame that the color of someone's skin,
you're never going to see that breakthrough. Yeah.
Still matters.
Yep.
And what did it listen to the song War from Bob Marley? Yep. Until, we get rid of this idea that holds one race superior than another, or holds another inferior, when the color of a man's skin is no more of a significance than the color of his eyes. How is it that we're supposed to be civilized and yet we can't get past something so simple?
Yep.
We're the human race. Okay. Yeah, there's some brown ones and some black ones and some, different shades of whatever color.
So here's
one human race. We're still humans. And I say it again about the Declaration. That's how bad it was that the colonists in the colonial times said it was okay to call black people 3/5 of a person, as if this is some new biblical way. At least, who is it? Solomon said half of them. Cut them in half. We're going to cut 3/5.
Yep.
Half people can't even figure out what 3/5 is, which is 60%, just so you know.
Yeah.
So, but it's just, again, just how are we at this point in our development as a country, as a world, and we still see things in such a simplistic, I don't know, ignorant way. And we define it as such and want to. And that's what's, regardless of what everybody else says, and this is just my opinion, but at least half of the people voting for Trump is only voting for him because they're bigots.
Here's some fun speculation for you. Let's go backwards in time. Do you think society would have been cast in the worst light possible, and I'm going to say this kind of weird way, if we would have had a Trump versus Obama in, say, like a 2012 or a 2016? Because if you think about who Obama ran against, he didn't run against exactly like soft-spoken people with the Romneys and the John McCains of the world. John McCain had a pretty good conservative following, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, they weren't as divisive in their rhetoric to create some sort of racial divide like Trump is at times.
That's because they were afraid to do that. Trump
opened
the door.
Exactly. So, and if you think about it, if we truly had a white versus black situation in the presidency, which I think could have happened only if it was like a Trump versus Obama, because you had somebody outspoken in one way or the other, right? Then I think it would have divided the country even worse. And honestly, it would have been bad on everything, to say the least. Because God forbid, let's say Obama still wins in that situation, then you've got conservative white America, whatever you want to call it, or racist America, I should say. Not even say conservative, say racist white America, causing upheaval toward government at that point, or the other way around. So I
don't know. I feel like that depends on a couple of things.
Yeah.
So for instance, Obama still ran against somebody white.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was that dynamic there that could be identified as such. It wouldn't have been as powerful
it was softer.
Because Trump is just bombastic and just.
Well, that's the thing. Like, okay, that's what I said. Like, Mitt Romney. Okay, so Mitt Romney, obviously a white man. However, he was kind of, I wouldn't say like characterized or whatever, but he wasn't given a connotation as pure white because he was also a Mormon, a practicing Mormon, respectfully. And people denigrate people, whether it's religion, race, sex, whatever it is.
Yeah. Those are the big three right there: religion, race, politics. They do that right first,
it happens first in your head when you're thinking that way. So that was Mitt Romney, and I forget who his running mate was. Also off the top of my head, on so was it
I don't remember. I was trying to remember that as we were talking
Can you
about
remember that
earlier.
off the top of my head? Now, when you have John McCain comes off as the quote unquote old white guard at times, and respectfully. I mean, the man was a war vet, for God's sakes, and a great one at that. But he had crazy Sarah Palin as his running
Who's
mate.
making a comeback? Who's making a comeback? I heard her name mentioned as vice president just now recently.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're crazy Sarah Palin. So that kind of softened his stance as like the old conservative white racist perception, right? Versus like a Trump, let's say. Mm-hmm. So they kind of, I think both between Romney's team and McCain's team, it didn't pose that racial divide in America of choosing between white and black. But like you just said, it still existed in people's minds, obviously.
Oh yeah, it still exists.
Yeah. But not as talkatively as we're doing it now. Now, in this case, let's pretend you do put an African American, woman or man, against Trump right now. How does that pose?
Well, that's what we're seeing right now, right? If Kamala is going to be
I still don't buy her as any one race. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I don't think she has clout as an African American. I don't think she has clout as an Indian. I don't think she has clout as any race.
I don't disagree with that. And by the way, when Romney ran, Paul Ryan, who was the representative,
Paul Ryan, thank you. Yes. Yep.
Was
and now he was a conservative white, young though. He was very young. Mm-hmm. So he would have been kind of like a future for the Republican Party. But then he got it wiped off the face of the earth too, apparently.
Well, once you lose, unless you're willing to pick yourself back up, you just get forgotten about. You just
Hillary case in point, honestly.
Yeah. What happened to her since
she lost? I don't see her name being the first one people throw up when Biden. He was like, "Hey, maybe we should go back to Hillary." No, that ain't happening.
Well, and what you were saying, I think you're right. I think Trump in his rhetoric and his ability to use being on The Apprentice and understand how to get the media, sway the media by dropping certain words, using those gosh, that escapes me right now. But
his mannerism, his
I think it's more important than that. He uses certain types of words. It's like my neighbor who called the cops on me because I didn't belong in this neighborhood. She told me that straight up. And I was in my alley going to my parking spot. She left her dogs off the leash. I didn't run them over because I was obeying the laws and everything. And I said, you might want to put on a leash. And
you're being a good neighbor. Forget the laws.
I was being a good neighbor. She didn't say thank you. She rewarded me by telling me that, what are you doing driving down the wrong way down the alley, which was a lie. Why are you in this neighborhood? She actually said that word for word. Why are you in this neighborhood? And I said, I've lived in this neighborhood longer than you. I live right there.
Karen.
But she got on the phone and she called 911 because I got pissed when she said that. She called 911 and said, this person is being threatening. This black man is being threatening to me. They were there like that. When you learn how to use certain words, and I can't bring the actual word I want to use right now, but that's what Trump does. So he just has these great sound bites that people pick up on.
Yep.
Doesn't really use them with any substance or really any. It just, it just says that word. And people gravitate towards that. There were so many people who said Trump at least says things in a confident manner.
They say
that means something. They jump off the bridge. I said in a confident manner. Are you going to jump off the bridge?
The positive
this is what people want. This is America, and he uses that.
Well, the positive spin people try to put on his mannerism and his masculinity or chauvinism is he speaks his mind, and at least that's what they say. And he's right. He does speak his mind, unfiltered, unequivocally, in what he believes. So I can respect him for that in the premise. As far as whether that's appropriate for somebody of his position trying to get the presidency of the United States, well, no.
Don't give him that power. And just because you speak your mind,
if you want to be the rocker on the front porch, the old man that's sitting out in front of his stoop, no problem.
Yeah,
have fun.
if All in the Family comes back,
and
he casted in the role of Archie Bunker, great for him. Wonderful.
Rest in peace, sir. Yes.
Yes, rest in peace. All respect to you, Carol. You were a great actor, and that was legendary. And actually, I'm so glad that show was on. But here we are, 2024, and we have someone speaking like this, and no one's challenging him. And again, for everybody who wants to vote for him, get on TikTok and hear what he said out of his own mouth about the Republican Party and people who vote Republican. He said this 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it's coming to fruition now. He called you stupid in your face.
Yep.
And said he could lie to you.
And still win the presidency.
And still win because you'll still vote for him because you're too dumb to recognize it.
Yep.
Here he is again, guys.
Yeah, like I said, it's.
Would you allow a man to tell you that if you're a woman? Exactly. Would you go back with that man?
Exactly.
If your friend told you that, would that be your same? Would you still have the same friendship after that discussion? If you could apply it in that way, think about the presidency and what that means.
Yeah.
So I just want to put that out there again. Looking at Joe Biden, God, I'm sort of glad he's out of the race because I sure didn't want to say I wanted to vote for him because I didn't. Right. But that's what was shoved down my throat, and I can't vote for Trump just because I'm not. You know, people like me aren't a priority for him.
Right. No, like I said, he's going to, and that's why I say the illusion I made earlier about the math game, right? So at this point, they're literally playing the math game. Their first campaign rally, if you recall correctly, this past weekend was in Michigan together.
I saw that. Yeah, that was the rally, and again, the DNC was in Milwaukee.
Yep. Yeah, RNC. Yep.
I mean, RNC. Excuse me.
Yeah. They were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
So, I think there was a reason there because if you think of two states that really play a role in this election,
well, it's an entire belt. I mean, you know, Wisconsin's where your RNC was, Michigan's where your first rally was, your vice president's from Ohio. You know, the only state, and so this is my 2 cents, and you know, you can gamble on what it's worth. They're going to try to take back basically the industry belt. They're going to try to take Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin to win the election.
And they will
sacrifice Georgia because of all the upheaval there.
Mm-hmm.
They will sacrifice Arizona, and that will be if you play the math right, the road to 270, whatever, they get just over the hump by doing that.
So, listen to that strategy you just laid out.
Yeah.
The Republicans are thinking and doing and acting with that goal in mind and identified how to get there. And I'm sure if they didn't win one state, they've had another state.
Yeah.
What are the Democrats doing right now?
Democrats are still thinking, they're going backwards and still thinking, oh, we'll just win on popularity and everything else. And the fact that nobody likes, they're going to continue to attack the Republican way of thinking or the Trump way of thinking and say, hey, this guy would just be, they're playing on fear mongering. If you think about it, they're going back and saying, what do you think the next 4 years will be like with this guy? You haven't told us what the fuck you're going to do first for the next 4 years. I'm sorry, but like, I'll be very blunt about it. But in any politician, I don't care which side of the aisle you're on, because I vote back and forth every single time on whoever's going to tell me what they're going to do for their term. I don't care about the past. I don't care about their beliefs. I want to know what they're going to do. And this is something I picked up from both in high school and college from a professor I had who was in poli-sci. And he said it very simply on the very first day of class in college. You vote with whatever is going to help you personally. It doesn't matter if your personal beliefs are to help the greater good. You and me both, or anyone else. At the end of the day, you're voting with your pocketbook, you're voting with your family, and what's going to be best for you in the next 3 or 4 years.
That's exactly right. That's why I said for me, he's not. When I said that, it's because for me, he doesn't align for me. He's not looking out for me. I'm not a priority.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, I'm waiting for the candidate to tell me what they're going to do for the next 4 years. And the only person that's done something to that effect so far is Trump, because he said, hey, I'm going to take away this, that, and the other that Biden did or whatever it is. I'll bring back my tax cuts or whatever it is. So he's told you what he's going to do. Whether you like it or not, that's up to you to decide as a voter, obviously.
Right.
But he's told you what he's going to do. The Democrats haven't told you what they're going to do the next 4 years. They just said that, hey, put this guy in. They're repeating the other guy, which just helps him. It just helps him.
and it's hypocritical, right? Because that's the thing that you want to get out of the politics. It's supposed to be about what are you going, what's your vision, and how you're going to get there. No different than anybody, like every year, working in corporate America, we all do an assessment, right? And then we set goals. And when you
Yep.
set goals, you don't just write, I have a goal of being better next year. You
Yeah.
actually have to have action
You have to have
items behind
action
them
items.
to be able to identify how you're going to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
In the past,
Yep.
Trump never did that. He actually won.
Off the
When he
cuff.
won, I can't tell you one thing he said outside, I'm going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. Outside of that, I cannot tell you anything that he said that was
reading,
an identifier of what his agenda was and how he was going to get there.
He was reading Political or some other like fact-checking type thing, but there's only two things that he really executed from what he said in a specific manner. One, tax cuts. He did get tax cuts done while he was in office. He
Tax cuts for the rich?
No, if you remember, he actually had the payroll tax cut.
Oh, that's right. So he did do. But if you
forget
think about
some of the little things, yeah. So he had the
but
payroll.
Isn't the payroll tax cut also helping corporations because corporations pay the other side of the payroll tax? People may not know that. That's what corporations do. Your payroll taxes that you pay are matched by the corporation.
Interesting snowball there. So one of the things that was his campaign promise in 2020, I believe, or whatever that he lost, was also, from 2016, I should say, was that he was never for the corporate tax. As you may know, the corporate tax in America is the highest of anywhere in the world, which is why corporations don't like to stay in this country or operate, or more importantly, bring their business here, because we pay 35% corporate tax here.
And exactly. And who runs America?
Well, that's the problem, right? Yeah. So exactly. So, but what he did in office is he reduced that down to 20% during his first term, during 2016 to 2020. So that enabled, and again, we still haven't seen the real facts on this, and this is where I'd love to see some fact checking on how many corporations actually either expanded or brought back their overseas businesses to America because of that incentive, because that was the whole goal, right? The goal of that was to bring back companies to America, make America great again.
Make America great again. Stop outsourcing to India. We outsource to India. Many corporations still do it.
And that's the thing. I think it's honestly gotten worse, if anything. And that's the thing. Now, when Biden came in, those corporate taxes went back up to 35%. So I'll give some leeway on both sides of the aisle, faulting on both ends. Where one administration incentivized it, we don't see the proof of what benefited. And on the other end, you raised them back up, so it prevented those companies from even taking future action. So both are at fault for not having a succinctful message there. Going back to payroll tax cuts, so that did help consumers, meaning us, the average worker, even the lower workers. But what did it do for corporations? Like you said, did corporations have to cover more of that? Did it hurt Medicare? Did it hurt Social Security? Because we did cut some of those incentives to pay into those systems, right? So there's going to be a ripple effect when you do that. But going back to like what Trump did execute or didn't, one thing he could live on is the fact that, yeah, he did enact a tax cut, whether it helped you or not. And then he also built the wall, or at least started, 3/4 of it or whatever it is up so far. Whether that wall actually works, I don't know, and I don't care. Because at the end of the day,
a wall. All right, let's go through this little sewage drainage area here.
The way we used to go down.
Yeah, we're going to go down the sewer drainage, come back up over here. That wall doesn't matter.
I don't see pillars going 40 feet down to stop that from happening. I see something above ground, but that's still going down. I joke with this because my uncle's got a house, I think I told you, in New York, where he went 30 feet below grade to build his house, and it's just a monstrosity and all this. And I'm thinking to myself, that's all you have to do with a wall. Like, if you build 30 feet down, you can build something that actually stop people.
Did Mexico pay for it?
Well, see, okay. He's come off recently claiming that he got Mexico paid for it because they renegotiated NAFTA. So again, another credit given to the Trump administration. They did renegotiate NAFTA. Whether that actually helped us, I don't know. I would like to see some fact finding or some dollars tied to it.
Past, current.
Yeah, he may have actually sat in the room and said, "Hey, you're going to do this for us, or we're not going to do this," and maybe they got done. But I didn't see the afterward dollar effect of what that happened for the United States, of what benefit we got. So that's one piece of the pie. But to that point, did he get Mexico to pay for the wall in that same negotiation with NAFTA? Because that would have been the ultimate tie-in, in my opinion. So again, we got to see what the facts are there. After the fact, the big thing I think in Biden's agenda, or the one thing I think we can say that probably hasn't been talked about enough, He had very big regards for environmental type things. And maybe that kind of got thrown into his foray because remember, during the Trump administration, he pulled back EPA standards.
Yes, he did. Well, you know why he did that, right?
His own corporations, of course. I mean, I could tell you that firsthand.
Yeah, got to look out.
Yeah, so, that was done firsthand, not just for personal reasons, but it did for every corporation, including the biggest polluters in this country. Now, that said, we give America a lot of heat, both internally and externally, for being the biggest world superpower and polluted, and we should be more responsible. And I'm all for that. Here's my kicker. The two biggest economies in the world, China and India, are still the biggest pollution assets in the world, by far over the United States. If you look at any type of metric or measurement that exists out there, just on sheer volume. I mean, just think about the metrics. Just the population, just the fact that when every year a list of the most polluted cities in the world comes out, the top 20 list, 80% of it is just cities in those two countries.
Of course.
You have an occasional Los Angeles, New York, all that.
Yeah. But we've talked about how it looks in India, how the air quality is in India.
When I go there.
Yeah.
Like George Floyd said that. I said that in India in 2014. It hits you in the chest when you land. It's ridiculous. But that said, I get that we're trying to be a model as a country, and we should obviously try to honor and help.
We're supposed to set the tone. We got to be the example, right?
Yeah,
should be.
And we're trying to make this movement with electrics and all the other things going on. But I'll give you the same argument that my dad will give you, because my dad was in the nuclear industry for over 40 years. Where the hell is our infrastructure to support what we're trying to do to be cleaner? Now, you hear about people building all these wind farms and wind turbines in the ocean and all that stuff.
You got solar panels and all of that too.
We have not incentivized solar panels even. We have the greatest in my opinion, if I were a politician and I had all this money at my disposal, the number one thing I would do, and this is going to sound radical and crazy, is to build solar panels and farms over every single freaking parking lot in this goddamn country. And here's why. You could generate infinite amounts of energy by the fact that you have these things. And the reason I bring up this example is literally across the street from me is the public water works station here.
Mm-hmm.
Here, they took the step in this county, and I give credit to our county councilman who's Democratic, to build basically a solar parking structure for the Department of Public Works here near the water station. The entire thing is capped in solar panels and generates its own electricity. They are independent on its own grid for a public works station.
That's the kind of...
Imagine if every little grouping or, shopping center, parking lot, parking garage, imagine if everything could do that around the country, and you took one step further and gave government subsidies to do it the one time, and then collected it back wherever long-term, taxes or otherwise. You would make this country energy independent if we were smart about it.
Hey, I just want to interrupt you for a moment. By the way, Mr. Brown here will be running for the Democratic Party, and you may see him at the DNC this year. He's sort of laying out his plan of action right now, just in case you weren't listening. So,
if I were,
you got my vote from it. I vote for you over Camilla.
If I had any type of consulting gig, this is the idea I would give to any energy czar that's out there, because I don't see how you don't hit the low-hanging fruit on this. We have the ability to make our own solar panels in this country, even though we still export the majority of them from China. And I'll tell you that firsthand because I've shopped for solar for my own home. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it's too expensive for the common consumer. You're talking about an average expense. If you were to pay out of pocket without any subsidies, without any rebates or anything like that, you're looking at almost $8,000 to $10,000 a person to go out and build solar panels in your roof that will only make up the difference in money after 15 years.
Yeah, well, that's not the investment you're looking at if you're going to pony up that. Now, granted, it's supposed to be for the greater good, right?
Yeah, no, and you're supposed to think longer term, and I totally appreciate that. But here's my kicker to it, going back on the fact that we have EVs and stuff. We have so many EVs on the road, particularly Teslas, obviously, but
it's like an explosion. I swear they doubled in my neighborhood.
But here's the problem with EVs, and not just, I'll talk about the manufacturers themselves separately, but they all require charging stations. We don't have enough charging stations around the country. Some parts of the country do, Like in Maryland, I'll be prideful of the fact I've got one on almost every corner around here, so not a problem here.
No, but there was an issue with that just not that long ago.
And that was Joe's agenda this year, was to put out literally, I think the goal was something like 20 or 30,000 electric stations around the country with super power or whatever, superchargers. And they've only put up 3 in the entire country so far. So I have to blame the transportation secretary on that one.
Buttigieg, is that who that is?
Yeah, that's who that is. And so, so big failure there. And frankly, how those things get power is still from coal plants. Did you know that?
Oops.
We haven't moved to full wind or nuclear, clean sources of power. So again, I kind of pander to my dad, obviously, in this situation, because he's the expert in the industry.
He knows it, right?
But until this country decides to make a move either toward nuclear or wind power in a hard fashion, I'm talking huge investment from the government, huge subsidy into those sectors, develop engineering programs where kids are going into that field, because that's another problem I could talk about on a different day. Until we do that, you can't support what we're trying to do from an EPA regulation system.
Well, and I'll add this, just like anything that we have here in America, the powers that be have already sort of set up how we get our energy, how we do things. Do you think they want to have this?
No,
do you think that they want to substitute or reduce their income by allowing a new player?
You're simply empowering another industry. And you'll see this as a consumer. Take notice of your gas and electric bill for the last 3 years.
It's been ridiculous. It's been ridiculous. We were just going over both the bills, and I don't even know how they're calculating it, but I feel like it's a major ripoff.
I'll give you my quick analysis. In the time from the last 3 to 4 years, we have gone from an average rate, at least in this state, and I believe in Illinois too, of roughly about maybe anywhere between 6 to 8 cents a kilowatt was our price for electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And during the winter months, I believe we were somewhere near 30 to 50 cents per therm for gas. That should be the relative average cost in history, at least the last 3 years, of what we were all kind of collectively paying as a country, relatively speaking. If you look at your current bill, electric and gas, the lowest rates for electricity in the country, average, I'm not talking about like the Texases of the world and stuff like that, that are complete anomalies. You're going to see at least 12 cents a kilowatt for electricity and upwards of 90 cents a therm, which is why your natural this winter. And see, that's the question. Why, if we are supposedly working toward energy independence, is that happening? And why are foreign supplies dictating our prices still in both sectors? See, that's what pisses me off and that's where my vote comes in, honestly. My vote gets me the guy that's going to save me my money over the next 4 years.
Right.
In my household. It's as simple as that. Who's going to cost me less to get a gallon of milk over the next 4 years? Because that's what really matters to me at the end of the day. Yes, I want to look out for the greater good. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned about 20 minutes ago, it comes down to your pocketbook and your family.
Yeah, but you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not even sure the government controls that, and I'll tell you why.
Well, I mean, they don't. They don't. They do and they don't.
Right, but they do and they don't. And this is the part that they don't is this. I think as a system, the way capitalism is set up, think about the stock market and think about how people value or evaluate their company and the valuation of the worth. Every year I'm going to tell you that I'm going to do better.
Yep.
Every year I make a budget that's probably 10% more revenue or more, depending on who's saying what and how you're coming up with the numbers. So how am I ever going to make sure that the consumer benefits?
Never.
So the system is set up, capitalism is set up for you to suck it all out of it. I could make $1 billion last year. $1 billion sounds pretty good, doesn't it? If you net $1 billion, you're awesome. And the next budget that I put up, if I say that we're going to make a net $1 billion, it's like my value goes down as a company.
Well, I'll break it down in simple business terms. The general idea is when you start a business, You try to escalate your revenue, just like you said, every year.
Yeah, but then you reinvest in infrastructure.
And then you try to reinvest back into your infrastructure, but then hopefully that also drives the cost of whatever your product is down.
Because you're able to do things more efficiently.
Dream scenario, yeah, efficiently, cost effectively, everything else is supposed to happen over time.
In volume.
Instead, and this is where I think the government sector comes into play because of regulatory changes, because of different things, those things go askew. And I'll give you the example, like back to the example I was giving, electricity and gas. So yeah, if you look at your bills, your supply costs have gone up, like I've mentioned, and that's fine. You know, I'll understand for what it is. Take a look at your delivery charges. That's where they really punch you in the face, because
so it's costing me more money because they're charging me more to deliver the same services they were already delivering.
And that's where the efficiency model goes awry. So if you look at, like, I'll give you the two months in particular, look at any one of your bills, March or April, and then October.
Spring, and that's going into your
lowest, which is typically your lower energy utilization because it's the best kind of weather outside.
Right. You don't need air conditioning, you don't need heat. Right.
There are going to be months where your delivery charges exceed your supply.
I got to look at that. I'm glad you brought that up. And for anybody that's watching, do this. But see, these are the kind of things that people need to know about and people need to do to call out what's really going on. We are like sheep. I bet you, and I'm just as guilty. You just enlightened me. I bet you there's no one looking at their bills and understanding how to evaluate what's being charged and what's sort of the fluff in what you're being charged, and being able to then go back and say anything. No one is doing that, and we need to do more of this. We need to challenge things more, whether it's something coming out of someone's mouth or the policies we already have in place or the structure that we have in place that is looking to support us in the future. Is this the right structure for us, the right process for us? We need to challenge these things, America.
I'll give a quick shout out to something called Citizens Utility Board, CUB, if you will.
I've heard of that.
In Illinois.
Yeah.
So I signed up for it way back when I signed up in Illinois and used to get their press things and whatever. And I saw what they're fighting for. It's literally a lobby that goes to the state government in Illinois and fights for citizens' rights for utility prices. And they've done a great job, masterful job of trying to control things whatever they can. And they help out citizens on the back end too. Like, let's say you want to try to go energy efficient, they hand out bulbs and everything else. Everything that help you save that.
Actually, I had some bulbs. That's how we got some of our energy efficient bulbs. Was exactly that. That's why I know it. I was going to say I know that.
Yeah. So no, great entity, but entities like that need empowerment to make government better, because they're the ones also fighting for the delivery charges to be fought. They're actually doing litigation, believe it or not, to try to fight the delivery costs. I believe with People's Gas in Illinois. Yeah.
People's Gas is here. Yep.
They're fighting them tooth and nail in court right now over the delivery fees. Like I said, do your own diligence, but take a look at your bills. You're going to be baffled by some of the trends over the last minus 3 years and then forward of what you're looking at in that industry for gas and electric. And you're just going to be, you're literally going to be questioning yourselves, like, how does this work? And more importantly, how can I change it? Kind of thing.
Well, here's a question I have. What is government representing? Why do we have to have?
Isn't that the oversight we're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah, but isn't that what the state, local, federal governments are supposed to be doing? They don't necessarily have to be aligned. We sort of given some freedom to each state to do their own thing. But isn't that what they're supposed to be looking out for? Again, we elect these officials. What the fuck are you guys doing? You should be looking at. That's what I'm saying. That's all they're doing. Hey, you know what? I want to make sure that we continue to be able to do business the way we do it, because we make, however many millions of dollars a year. Yeah. Okay, well, give me, $10,000, and I'll make sure that we look the other way. Yep. Why are we allowing this to happen? This is to the detriment of all of us. But it's about corporate America. It's about making sure we make the profit. It's about, we don't care, and you said it earlier, we were talking about this, the priority isn't, hey, we want businesses to make money, but we want it to be fair.
Yeah.
We want businesses to make them as much money as possible. And we're going to take advantage of any and every situation or event to align people to do it. And guess what? When we raise the prices, like what we did during the supply chain issues during COVID, we're going to keep them there because we conditioned you already. And now that our supply chain costs have gone down, our profit margins have gone up.
Yep.
That's
like
what America's built on.
Greed since the pandemic is at an all-time high. Personal, private, everything. Corporate, take your pick.
Wait, hold on. Show me the screen. What should I tip you for telling me that?
Exactly.
I mean, we tip for everything now, right? I crossed in front of your house.
I can't stand it. Our next show will be devoted to how I hate tip culture right now.
All right, we can do that because I'm right there with you. Plus, we can do some comparisons because in Europe,
100%.
I went with the American attitude of, here, I'm going to tip you 20%. First off, they all thought I was being pretentious and that they had a different view of who I was. They were giving me attention because it's like, wow, this fool was just throwing money around like an idiot.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I would have given them nothing or 5%,
still would have been fine.
That would have actually been better than me giving them 20%.
Yep.
Because I'm the American coming over here who doesn't know the culture, doesn't know the ways of the world, and thinks, I got some, I'm going to throw some money around, show them how great I am. They don't do that over in Europe, but yet here, you got a tip. I did it myself, but it's like the way we think. I went to a service station and I had a guy put some air in my tire and I tipped him like $3 for it.
Sure.
But that was his job.
See, and that's what pisses me off right now. When you go into, like I said, we'll do this on another show, but when you go into an app or even go to a counter, let's say I'm walking into my local coffee shop. I see what's on the menu. I order it up. The guy says, okay, pay for it. I charge my card. It instantly asks me for a tip, even before the service has been rendered, mind you.
Before you've gotten your product, yes.
First off, the word tip means you did something above and beyond your job to warrant excessively a compensation that I'm willing to give as a big thank you. Yes. Not the word, hey, it's baked into my fucking price of my latte. No.
Yes. Yes. But that's where we are as a culture now. And the businesses have been allowed to do this, and they all do it.
I hate it.
I hate it. And they guilt you into it. And we're so gullible, we get guilted into it.
Well, no, I used to feel bad up until a certain point, probably a couple of years ago, when I was like, this is getting arbitrary and ridiculous. And I'll put down big fat 0 until the service. And I even told people, even at the counter or even a restaurant, been like, until the service is done, then I'll pay my tip in cash.
And you know what? And that's what I like to do too, because just like you said, so wait, I'm going to tip you. What if the quality, the service, the product is less than what is expected?
Exactly.
I tipped you already for that.
Yep.
Where's the incentive for you to provide the best quality of service, product, You're not incentivized, right?
I had a great joke with my mechanic, who I love. He's an independent guy, and I'll just go there for routine service. And we were just talking like in between time or whatever, and I was like, hey, I just paid for my thing over it. I'm surprised your thing doesn't ask for a tip. And he was like, man, I wish that was happening.
Hey, have you seen, you've seen the Domino commercial, right? Or I don't know if it's local, but they have that Domino's commercial where they show everybody giving a tip. That is so great. The athletic trainer flips over the screen and gets a tip. The justice of the peace flips over the screen and asks for a tip before he says, married, you're not man and wife. But that's how it is. That's where our culture has gone to.
That is awesome.
And nobody's saying anything about it.
Nope.
Like these companies, you know what really burns me up besides the idea of tipping before you get what you have is the fact that these same businesses 3 years ago, 4 years ago, were suffering because of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And they were saying there was a chance they could go out of business. And people in our neighborhood and every other neighborhood across the nation rallied to keep these businesses afloat. What really happened, though, is they learned how to create a model where, wow, we got all of these extra expenses we really don't need. We can go with this to-go model and make a lot of money. The to-go model was we'll just have 2 or 3 people who know how to bag shit up, and the rest of them are cooks. We don't have to worry about dishes. We don't have to clean shit. We ain't got to do nothing. And they made their money, and then they were able to say we could raise the prices because of this. They snuck in charges like charges for insurance, COVID charges, all of these things, they snuck into your bill. They didn't tell you. They actually snuck it in your bill. And they might still be doing it. Look at your bill the next time you go to a restaurant. See if they have, I forget what it is, but it's like a 3.5% charge. And what it is, what it is, and I went to the Cafe Barbariba. I was up there.
Yeah.
And the guy said, I looked at the bill, and me, I've been ripped off before. I was at Fogo de Show. They tried to charge me $55 for water I didn't order, water and stuff. So I check all my bills. And I looked at it and said, what is this 3.5%? Oh, it's a surcharge to help us pay for the insurance of our workers. But they didn't tell me that. They didn't put it so I can notice it. They just snuck it in there and saw if they could do it. How underhanded is that?
Oh, no. So I've been vetting out contractors for projects at the house my parents bought or whatever. And every one of them gives me the same excuse, like, oh, well, lumber charges are up. Wood. I'm sorry, but wood prices have been up for 10 years. As far as I'm being told. But you know what? If I actually go look at the price of lumber, because I like going to the source half the time when I do stuff, especially in home projects, and I've literally actually emailed these folks like blatantly after I've told them I'm not taking your bid. I've been like, hey, by the way, wood charges are actually this. If you would have actually bid on this project according to cost, I would have taken your service. And I've called them out, knowing that I'll probably never do business with them again. I hate that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're ripping off not just me. You're ripping off everybody that you're getting bids from. And I'm sorry that there are other folks that are getting victimized by it. But it pisses me off when people falsely tell you narratives just to sell a product.
Fabricate.
I don't care what industry you're in, car salesman or not. Yep. It pisses me off. Be real with me and you will get my business and I will respect you for it and I'll blow you up for it if I have to. Meaning, I will help promote you.
Yeah, but don't play me stupid. Don't play me like a mechanic does, Joe Woman, who they assume doesn't know anything, and then or it's just Joe Person, not even Joe Woman. That used to be back in the day. It was Joe Woman. It's Joe Person. And they try to charge you more just to charge the flipping flabbing and the basket weaver and the this and that, and you owe me $1,000. But really, all I did was replace a spark plug. But the lumber thing, actually, we're having some of the issues because we're trying to do, I'm part of our board and we're trying to do our fences and the posts that we use. They have gone
the actual another time.
What's that?
I can tell you real costs at another time. I'll tell you maybe for another day.
But I feel like what we're talking about, this capitalistic culture, is going to be the downfall of what America's supposed to be, because we're not looking out for people anymore. There is not, the medical field doesn't look out for people. Insurance doesn't look out for people. Now you're going to restaurants, and my point was, we help them stay afloat. And how did they repay the people who helped them stay afloat? All of their costs are still the same or higher than they were during COVID.
Yep.
But where's the payback? Where's the thank you? We don't have that anymore because it's so driven by bottom line money and numbers and revenue that we forget that what used to make a good business was a great product and making it affordable for the public. That used to be the design, but it's not that anymore. It's like, let's make sure we can get as much as we can from Promit.
Yeah, everybody.
From Roy, from whomever else. And
I was going to say, let's leave it on that note and pick right off the next time for sure.
That sounds good. Let's do it again. Put that out here. Just the last parting note to everybody. As we're getting into this political season and things are going to start ramping up, please be smart about how you vote. I don't care who you vote for, but at least have something to support the why in the vote.
Yep.
And it goes beyond just because he's this or because he's that party. Should be more than that, because they're supposed to be representing you. So for people who aren't aligned with one candidate or another, don't just vote for them because of the party line. Vote for it because you believe in it and that they're going to, as Promise said earlier, and I said too, they're going to do something to help you.
Yep. Nope. I appreciate. And be educated. Your vote is a powerful thing, and value it as if it's something personal to you, and do your diligence is all I can say. Regardless of where you go with it, be diligent and respect where you're going to go with it at the end of the day.
That's it. That's all we ask. Doesn't matter who you vote for. Just make sure that you understand the why.
Exactly. Yep.
And from Brown and Browner, we wish you all a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Absolutely. See you guys later.
Thanks, Promise.
Yep. Thanks.